All right. So, Capricorn, the sign in the zodiac that you should probably not mess with. So, Capricorn likes to use the phrase I use, and I like to put therefore I am. Capricorn is the last of the earth signs, and because of this, it is the structure, the pillar of, in my opinion, a really good way of evolving. So, let's keep going. Capricorn's ruled by Saturn. Capricorn is usually in the 10th house if you have an Aries rising. If not, then you're going to learn about that. So, to have a Capricorn sun, you'd be born between December 22nd and January 19th. The element is Earth, and the ruling planet is Saturn, and it is seen as the sea goat. I look at it and I think of the mountain goat because they are able to stand in very difficult high places with little to no um, grip to me and still make it up. So I like to look at it that way. Ambitious, very disciplined, very determined, very responsible. And I like to say with that, all of these traits are because of consistent tests and trials from God or source or creator, whatever you want to believe in. Um, in order to be a strong person, you have to be given things that make you strong. In order to be a patient person, you have to be tested in order to be patient. So Capricorn to me is that idea. But some of the positive traits, the ambition is very goal orientated. It's very much striving for success. And Capricorn oftentimes correlated with capitalism because Pluto in Capricorn, now that it's no longer here, it's just really ambitious. And you have to think about how Capricorn is one away from Sag, right? When you think about the wheel and you have Capricorn in the 10th house, it's in between two things. It's in between Aquarius in the 11th, and then it's also in between Sag in the 9th. Now think about this. Capricorn is in between Jupiter and Uranus, or sometimes also seen as a sharing of Saturn. So you have Saturn here that's in between the two. So it has to lend itself to being optimistic and also defying. That's what gives you Saturn. Jupiter is expansion. Capricorn's like, you know what? I like the expansion. I don't like the drugs and the partying, so let's take that out. And then Capricorn looks at Uranus and it's like, I like the way you do things. Sometimes it's unseen, it's shocking, it's very cold. I'll take that. Am I actually going to do it to necessarily help others? Maybe, maybe not. If our values aligned. And so that's how we get Saturn. It's restrictive in that sense. It's disciplined. It will make sure that whatever is needed to be done will be done. And for this reason, I personally like to view Capricorn as a feminine sign. I know that there are debates, but I see it as a feminine sign, and I'll talk more about that. But in a gist, if Jupiter is abundance and it's masculine and it's perpetually expanding, Capricorn being after is feminine and it's perpetually analyzing itself. It's like an evolved Virgo, in my opinion. And that's why I look at it as feminine. Saturn will restrict. When Saturn and Jupiter square, we typically get budgeting. We get a pullback in the markets. We get a lot of restriction, but it's really trying to create equilibrium, right? And I think about that as well. Saturn's exalted in Libra, and that exaltation in the feminine is saying you can't be too masculine, you can't be too feminine, you got to have both. So I look at it to be like it's kind of both, but naturally feminine. Now, everything is about the small, steady things to get where you want to be. And this is another point. The masculine is going to want to go to 0 to 1,000 tomorrow, right? It's going to want to achieve. It's never going to be satisfied. But Capricorn takes the idea of the Sag 0 to 1,000 in 10 days and says 10 years. Why can't we just continually evolve? Why do we have to evolve today and then find a new process or idea to progress through, sorry, tomorrow? This could be our life task. And that can make Capricorns very, very anxious. There's a side of Capricorn that people might not see when it taps into the polarity of Cancer, and I'll talk about that in some of their negative traits. They're reliable. Um, Having Capricorn friends is really grounding. If they say they're going to be there, they'll be there. And by Capricorn friends, I'm talking about Capricorn stelliums, Capricorn moon, Mercury, or Jupiter, Mars, and they will make sure that they do what they say they're going to do. And for this reason, sometimes you might see Capricorns, the whole harsh and cold, they're just straightforward. And that's following from Sag as well. It's like blunt, sometimes as a jokester, but Capricorn's like, take the joke out. Like, I'm just going to tell you, you suck and you're not doing your job right. And we need someone else. I don't hate you, but you suck. That's very Capricorn. Or, you did a good job. We're going to give you a promotion. We're going to give you a raise. And I need you to keep doing that so that things are consistent. That's also Saturn. Now, the negative with this is the pessimistic side of Capricorn. Because of the ambition and the determination to be better, the pessimism comes from, in my personal point of view, as I said, Virgo is, to me, the elevated Capricorn. Virgo is all about data. Now, Capricorn is I use. And I look at this and I say, Virgo and Capricorn get along really well. If you got a Capricorn friend and you're a Virgo, you understand what I mean by this, and vice versa. Because whereas Virgo's probably not going to take that step, the Capricorn person will come in and say, just do it, or you need to do it this way. Because the use case here is like Virgo's like, I'm useful, and Capricorn is like, I know how to use you. And they come together and align with cynicism and pessimism at times because Virgo has done the math to say this will not work. And Capricorn's like, well, I don't see a way for me to use this in the next 20 years. And the pessimism will lead to workaholic tendencies because of overworking to make up for it. And this is where we talk a little bit about that anxiousness. The opposite of Capricorn is Cancer. You guys are able to see my screen, right? You can just nod if you're able to. You're not.
Actually, no, yeah.
Oh, my days. I've been speaking and sharing, and I thought you guys could see it. I'm so sorry. Let me just go ahead and make sure that you are able to. How about now? Okay, awesome. I'm so sorry about that. That really sucks. Here's what I'll do. I'll pause this and go back, but there we go. I'll continue. So, Capricorn is the polar opposite of um, Cancer. And like I was drawing before, and I'll draw it again, this is a chart where Gemini is the rising sign. So Capricorn's in the eighth house. So what does that mean? We have Saturn here in the eighth house, right? It's kind of tough. We have Uranus in the ninth house. We have Jupiter in the seventh house. Okay. The opposite of Capricorn, being Cancer,
Power off.
sorry about that, is in the second. If I'm reading this chart on its own, I now know that when it comes to the matters of the eighth house, which is ruled by Scorpio, which would be possession of others and their values implicating onto you, which is intimacy, when it comes to love, sex, death, marriage, all that generic stuff, Saturn has a desire here for it to be long term. I don't know why this is, but Saturn transiting the eighth house or Saturn in the eighth is a very difficult thing to have for your relationships. I know. I also see it. And The reason is because it requires discipline and it requires long term, but it can be very anxious, can have very bad attachment um, styles in relationship. Jupiter in the seventh is constantly being the thing that is attracted by people because the Sag makes you seem appealing in the seventh house. The ninth house in Uranus, though, is showing me that your ideas are very radical. And so it kind of becomes a very stressful point of contingency for eighth house to have Saturn. Saturn definitely doesn't want to be in the eighth. Um, but then what sucks the most is Cancer being in the second. Does this mean it's bad for you to have this if you're a Gemini rising? No, but it's a difficult thing because where you have Saturn can be kind of difficult. Besides the 12th house to me would be like Saturn's chilling there, other than the 10th. Most of the time it could be kind of difficult, you know? And the polar opposite being Cancer makes it so that when your needs are not met, you tap into that anxious, worrisome, obsessive Cancer quality that wants to make things safe or a happy home. It wants stability. There are no planets here in Cancer, but if we're considering that the second house being your values, your own sense of love, which is ruled typically by the planet Venus, is opposing the actual natal Venus in the sign of Capricorn or Saturn, I'm now thinking that if this person doesn't either have the financial needs that they need from their other, they're going to spiral. It's not healthy. And this is why I was saying, ironically, the moon's in Virgo now, but this is why I was saying that Virgo and Capricorn kind of get together because they're always looking at the best possible way. And when it doesn't happen, it creates pessimism. So that's like a really big thing. Welcome to the other people that joined covering Capricorn and other topics. If you have questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. Um, I'll go ahead and resend this. But moving on from that, the reserved and aloof nature of Capricorn, where they're emotionally distant, it's really them being, and I'll always say this, especially because I have a few Capricorn moon friends, they are emotionally constipated. Like they just cannot. I didn't understand it until I started doing readings in 2022 for free back then. And I realized so quickly, especially like Cancer, Sun, Capricorn moon, but like Capricorn moon people are just so, they're so soft. They're so squishy, ironically. Same with the Capricorn risings. Like they put on such a facade. And it's not like they're trying to be a facade so hard, but it's like they feel so boxed in that they're afraid to move because Saturn's going to be there to be like, no, you know? And so they're kind of like, I don't want to say, and this is not a weakness because I know a Capricorn rising or moon's listening to this and saying, oh, I'm not afraid or scared or whatever, but it's like Pavlov's dog, where you can condition a dog, but you can have that negative condition that if you constantly are abusing an animal, that your scent, your walk, your presence triggers a trauma, and they're immediately in a very scared position. That's what Saturn can kind of do to these natives that have this. And so they can become emotionally distant out of protection because honestly, if a Capricorn falls in love with you, you're really set for life. And I don't abuse that, but you have to understand that when a sign feels most comfortable, and I'll give you a visual representation of this. Let's kind of try and move the chart here a little bit and kind of bring some diversity with this animation. Please don't crash. Okay, cool. Let's use a Scorpio rising. Why not? Um, in astrology, this is a cool tip. Your first house, and this is my interpretation. Your first house is your personality, but it goes through your seventh house and it trickles into your first. So the people you're attracting as a Scorpio rising is people that are probably more chill than you actually are. And so they see you as chaos and it's interesting to them. The reason why the seventh house is marriage, contracts, and whatever is because when you do come into contact with someone and they come through this portal or side of your house, that's kind of what you want. You want to be with people that are relating to the sign of your descendant, right? and obviously delineating the planets and the degrees and how it affects with mutual stuff, whatever. But Venus is in the seventh house of a Pluto rising or Mars or Scorpio. So because of this, you want to think about, once I as a person feel calm, the chart inverts, right? And this is a cool little alchemic thing that you can do. When you are at your best, your chart inverts. All of your planets become their opposite, meaning that, oh, how did I manage to do that? Okay. Meaning that you now become the Taurus rising in a safe space, right? Your descendant being the Scorpio rising, meaning that your friends are the chaotic ones. If that makes sense, it's a yin and yang, and this is an alchemy you can do in your chart. So that means if you have like three placements in Capricorn, oh my God, you become so squishy. Like all that cancer comes out, and it's like, I'm actually so soft. Like this Sherpa jacket I got on. They really are. And it's the same for cancers, right? We're just going to talk about this briefly because we're not talking about cancer, but people don't realize cancer can be very emotionally cold, because once you get them to that point, switch into a Capricorn, and then they don't care. And good luck getting them back. They will hold that emotion forever. You got to remember, cancer also has that good memory of time, and so they will hold that with them. But anyway, moving on, let's talk about the actual planet. Before I move on, do any of you guys have any questions? Once again, I know it's recorded, but your voice won't be recorded. So if you don't, then I will move on. Okay, cool. So the planet Saturn, it is the embodiment of responsibility, discipline, and structure. Ignore this watermark, doing everything for free until I get paid to do so. Um, Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, and this is something that I want to talk about. As Pluto is currently now in Aquarius, today's the 22nd of November, Aquarius has a polarity. And this is important to know with Capricorn because Uranus, the whole mythos of Saturn, Kronos giving birth to Gaia, giving birth to the gods with Gaia and Earth in itself, and then Saturn having to come in and chop the phallus of Kronos so that we couldn't get eaten. A whole bunch of stuff with the history. I don't remember it to the T. But because of this, there is a relationship here between Uranus and Saturn. In the Vedic nakshatras, you can look at this, and I think it's like Andhra for the people that do practice Vedic, but it's a masculine and feminine again, where the masculine here would be Kronos, and then the feminine would be Saturn or Uranus. The reason for this is because we're constantly oscillating from rebellion to stability and reservation, right? The rebellion is going to be Uranus, and the reserve or rules are going to be Saturn. So the reason why it's important is because Aquarius and Capricorn are the only two signs, in my opinion, that they kind of interchange. You can meet a very Saturnian energetic Aquarius where they're not caring about the collective other than to use them. You really want to be careful about that because that brings out the sort of George Orwell worrisome thing. And then you have the Saturn that can actually be fair with the Capricorn, but require penance first. They require you to actually have proof of what you're saying. And you really want to know this. I know it's a little bit of a modern, traditional kind of debate, but using both has definitely helped me psychologically for my clients when doing readings. And talking about the penance, we get into karma. So with Saturn, we do see karma, and that's why I say that they're afraid like a beaten dog because like Saturnians, a Saturn rising is going to tell you first, like, I can't do people wrong even if I wanted to. But at the same time, their karma comes quick for other people. And the longer it takes, the more dangerous it is for the other person. So you have to know that Saturn's going to teach. It's going to teach you a lesson. That's why the Saturn return is so scary for people because it's like, hey, what are you doing? The Saturn return is the full effect of the quinceañera or the bar mitzvah at 15, 16, because it's half of the way there. A really cool thing you can do with your moon cycle, if you're inclined, I just went through I have a moon in Virgo. I just had Saturn opposing my moon. Hell on earth, depression. But what you want to do is with Saturn, this is a nice little cycle. When Saturn conjuncts your moon, notice what you do. And when it opposes, notice what you have to let go. It's almost in the same way a moon cycle of when you have the new moon and then the full moon and then the waxing and the waning. There are multiple cycles like this in your chart when you have things. But with the moon, you want to make sure you understand that Saturn conjunct your moon is going to make you want to emotionally commit to something and do it for the next 12 years or so because of the fact that it hurts you or it feels a specific way. And then when Saturn opposes your moon, it's your own little, hey, like, what was this about? Did you get the seeds that you wanted? How do you feel? And if you don't really feel aware of that, it might cause you depression. If you are, then it might be a good experience. It's better than Pluto opposed Moon. It's loving, it's kind. But Saturn to me is the archetypal grandma for this reason. She loves you, she'll give you your cookies, but you gotta do what she says because she'll bring out that, like, oh, wow, I forgot. Yeah, like you have that. Um, but yeah, so boundaries and limitations are very important. I talked about the Saturn return, but just to go about it again, you have three in your lifetime, and there's a lot of triplicities in astrology. But 28 to 30, 56 to 58 to 60, 88 to 90 are very important parts. The first Saturn should be the only painful one. If you listen to the actual important part of the Saturn return, it should be the only one that really hurts. The Uranus return might hurt and whatnot. The Pluto opposing major planets might hurt. But in terms of Saturn, that's the only one that really should hurt because when you get your Saturn return, you understand now the proximity of where you are to your life's purpose. And then you can, look at your North Node or look at your stelliums and see how it plays out. But in terms of personality, Saturn should iron out a lot that you're not doing. So the second one should be like, okay, let's revise that. And it's that same concept when I said Saturn could oppose your moon versus the conjunction, but it's a simpler, lighter weight one that's just emotional. Saturn can manifest itself physically versus the emotional aspect of the Saturn conjunct your moon and then opposing it to teach you those lessons that it loves to do. So, the taskmaster aspect of Saturn here is really just the idea that I was talking about, Saturn being the Virgo 2.0. Don't hate me, Virgos. I still think you're useful. I have Virgo placements. I wouldn't just say that if I didn't think it was important. But it's like Virgo goes in, makes something more efficient, and leaves. The in between of that is Aquarius, where Aquarius to me seems like a higher octave of the mercurial placements, where it is a CEO. It's like in human design, it's like I think it's a reflector or projector or whatever, where it goes in and it knows how to make things better. It's the CEO in that sense because it has an idea. And then it also leaves. But Saturn wants to go in and stay there forever. If we think about Pluto leaving Capricorn, the significance of that is that the structures of power that have been put in place are no longer going to survive the next 22 years. Everything from finances all the way down to the way that people even communicate with each other or whether or not people, even stop at red lights, like that could change because there's a structure and a hierarchy that is there. Leo, Aquarius, and Saturn are brothers to me. Leo is the youngest, it's the spoiled. Um, Pluto and Leo gave us the boomer generation, and I've had enough readings with them. They're aware. Um, Pluto and Capricorn gave us the continuation of that. Pluto and Aquarius is going to destroy both because it's the middle child, and it's been saying that it's not been heard. But when we rewind to the Pluto and Capricorn, it seemed like the American dream is forever. And I'm just going to use America as an example. It's not to say it wouldn't be, it could be wherever you're from or whatever. But that idea of eternity, because of what we have come from, because it governs time. And that's really important to know where Capricorn is in your chart because that's where it's going to take you some time. It's going to take you a little bit of time for you to understand yourself and accept yourself. And it's difficult for that reason. For all the people that had cardinal signs or that were Capricorn based, my heart goes out to you, since 2008, because it's been pushing a rock up a hill every day, only for it to fall back down. That story. So, moving forward, if you guys have any question, of course, feel free to hop in at any point in time. We're going to talk about the housing system. So, we have in the basic chart, your 10th house has where Saturn or Capricorn could be outside of the planet, of course. And this is with an Aries chart. Now, the example I used last time, and I'll use it again, is Cancer rising. So, Saturn's in your 7th house. You need to know your birth time to do this, but knowing this will allow you to actually create a really nice template to see, okay, where is it going to take me forever, right? I'll give you myself as an example. I'm a Taurus rising. Saturn is in my 9th house. I have I have Neptune in Capricorn. Neptune is about religion, faith, but it's about media and consumption. Having it in Capricorn means that it will take me years to fully understand my religious, spiritual understandings, the way I perceive life. And that's the case. I got into learning all of this from Zeitgeist in 2013. It's been 14 years of me doing this to now, where I like to say Saturn's like a bamboo tree, where it takes years before it shoots up. Where now, when I speak about things, it's like, how do you know all this? You just got here, but it's like, I have years. If Saturn's in your 7th house, you're going to be going through constant failures of relationships that will, not relationships in interpersonal, but rather one to one because of the contracts, the people you meet, because that's your descendant. It probably makes you jaded, right? And this is the cardinal axis in its entirety. If you know where Capricorn is, you can know where the other cardinal points are, and it'll tell you a story. Having a 7th house Capricorn descendant tells me that for the most part, you try to be a very loving, calm person. You try to keep balance and harmony in your childhood, and unfortunately, you did not get that because the ideas that you needed to actually attain to or your legacy was constantly being challenged. So you're having to fight for that. You want a safe space that you just can't seem to portably go with, right? Knowing where Capricorn is will teach you that a lot in your chart. So let's talk about the 10th house, right? The 10th house is your public life. It's really your public reputation. The 10th house and the midheaven are two different things, the MC, and we're going to talk about that. But the 10th house is going to show you where you're going to take your time to develop. Your 10th house, if it's in Capricorn, is going to take you a while, but that's why you have an Aries rising, because your personality is so ferocious that you're going to fight for every grain and inch. It sucks that you have to, but that's the way it is. It's also your social standing, the way you present yourself and people see you. Having Capricorn means you've been at it for a while and you want your achievements, you want your plaques, right? The 10th house will also show you where you naturally have a sense of authority. Um, it will show you in Jyotish, it's seen as, if you have Jupiter in there or whatever, it could be seen as a guru. Whereas the midheaven is the mission of your life. And this is why it's important to distinguish the two, because if your midheaven or your MC is not in your 10th house will shade what it is that you have authority to, but then your MC is where you ultimately want to take it, right? because your 10th house having the ambitions and the dreams and the goals that you want, it's not the end all be all. It will constantly change, but you want to focus on your MC for that reason. The legacy you create having Capricorn placements is always going to come from the struggle. It's always going to come from the pain. And when I associate mom Cancer and then dad Capricorn, or grandpa Cancer and then grandma Capricorn, I like to think of the way that the parent that was there mostly in your childhood will shade the masculine and feminine in your chart, right? Regardless of the times of which we're saying. It's not about gender, but it's about the energy. That will definitely have a very shading factor, because it will then move on to show you the type of responsibility and accountability that you walk with in life, right? Not every Aries rising is going to express itself the same way. We know that, not just because of the placements, but the psychological effect of the environment also does that, right? You could look at it like it's epigenetics, but with psychology. With that, let's actually talk about that 10th house, that midheaven versus 10th house conversation. Going over everything, if you have planets in your 10th house, you're probably going to look more towards the legacy of what you create. As you get older, it will be very important. And when I look at this, I look at the big generational planets as the biggest. Like if you have Pluto, I think that's like the strongest thing ever. Like, wow, Pluto in the 10th house. You're insane. Pluto is greater than Uranus and is equal to Neptune, and then is greater than Jupiter, is equal to Saturn, and then it's greater to everything else, right? You can decide what you want that to be. And then I'll put planets, and then it's greater to asteroids. Now, Lilith is interesting with this because Lilith, depending on which one it binds to, can really be pro or con. If it's Lilith with like a Mars, that could be really ambitious. If it's Lilith with Uranus, like that could be a little detrimental for you, depending on your own aspects. But these planets that are in the 10th house, you now want to look at that planet and say, how does that relate? So let's go back to the Taurus rising. So right now I got Pluto and Aquarius in my 10th house. I'm an astrologer. I'm doing it right so far. When I wasn't doing it right, Pluto and Aquarius kind of smacked me around and said, you're doing the wrong thing. Now I also have Uranus and Jupiter in my 10th house. I'm teaching. Jupiter, being the teacher, in Aquarius, where are my Sag placements? I have Sag placements in the 8th house. So I'm teaching the occult, and I'm doing it digitally, and I'm doing it to everyone. If I was just looking at my Jupiter being there, and I was just looking at Uranus, I'd be like, well, I should be doing something with the collective, but I don't know. But you take that planet and then you look at where the sign is to say, like the mutual reception, and say, this is where I should be using this as a use case. And the more planets you have in the 10th house, the more you're probably going to end up not having a social life. Probably going to end up like not having a work-life balance at all. But maybe that's why you're here on this planet for this experience. So, because of Placidus and whole sign, we do see the whole MC issue. I try to do the math and do both in my head, but the MC, or the medium coli, is the middle of the sky. It's the highest point that you can be. And for me, I like to say the MC is just another version of the North Node, but in your career. Where the North Node is where your soul wants to go, the MC is where your soul wants to probably make some dinero and be seen for as a status thing, right? It's the pinnacle of achievement. Now, mind you, if you have North Node and the MC and the 10th house all together, well, that's a life. It's a very public life. Because the 10th house is the highest point, it's the opposite of the lowest point, right? Let's move this around a little bit again and let's try Leo rising. I love using this rising because this to me is always going to be royalty. 10th house. Well, hopefully you don't have Uranus in there. But 10th house, Taurus, ruled by Venus. Very demure, very elegant. Um, the fourth house, Scorpio. God, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in there that we're keeping in the dark because the brightest point of the sun, or I guess you could say like noon, would be like there. The darkest point is the fourth house. It's the subconscious to a point that's like so womb-like outside of the 12th, right? That's where the sun rises to me. Um, because of this, if you have Taurus in your 12th house, you really don't get peace because like you're the face of royalty. The rising being in Leo, people are always looking to you for your opinion and they want to know that. And you collect the masses because the masses are weird and they're different. That's Aquarius. You are now poised to be the person that has to keep the peace. This is the monarchy. This is England, right? A lot of them will have strong Taurus, Leo, and Virgo placements, right? They're expected to hold the peace. Meanwhile, we don't know what they're going on and doing there. This is a good example because the MC being in the 10th means that, yeah, you're going to have to show your life in that way. And it could be very uncomfortable if it's in Taurus. You just want peace and to be left alone. Taurus could be a grumpy old man that just wants his white picket fence, even if there was a world war 2 inches away from that fence. Don't cross on my lawn. Leave me alone, right? So because of this, the MC being in the 10th as well could be such a pinnacle of achievement. Uh, I have Venus in Cancer, 29th conjunct Leo, Sun conjunct. Oh my God. Wow. That's a lot. You are definitely a lover, not a fighter. That could definitely be a bit of a difficult thing to have because not knowing the rest of your chart, but wanting to just be such a help to people and it being 29 degrees conjunct Leo is like, wow. It can definitely be, it's going to be a very humbling experience with Pluto and Aquarius, um, because you've been the sun career-wise. Oh, wow. We got to talk about that after. Wow, that Aquarius placement, that's we got to talk about that after. But I'll continue. So let's just finalize this. So the MC in the 10th house is typically going to be the standard, but sometimes it can move out, right? And here in this example, if the MC is in the ninth or the 11th house, you have to understand that while yes, your career focus needs to be very much about your career, if it's in the 11th house, you got to incorporate people. If it's in the ninth, you now have to take that and become mobile about it to teach abroad, maybe a professional status, and keep that in mind. If the MC is opposed to a planet and it's in the ninth and it's like Mercury or something, maybe you might have to do teaching as a long-term basis, but then you're kind of scattered and you're going around campus to campus traveling because the MC being in the ninth is opposed to that Mercury in the third. So, planetary dignities. Planets kind of have places they want to be and they don't. Some can be seen as a pro, some can be seen as a con. It's up to you. And domicile is like the home. Detriment is like, we don't really like it. Exaltation's like, I love it here. I don't want to leave. And then fall is like, it's not the worst, but I don't like that I can't control it. Okay. So, what is the domicile of Capricorn? It's Saturn because pain. Capricorn wants to be in Saturn. And outside of the Great Conjunction, ironically, while it did take away from a lot of people, I loved asking Capricorns, like, it wasn't really that bad for you, was it? Um, Especially if it's something that you've already started seeing and working on, they were fine for the most part. Given some houses and some planets and all that, but usually they weren't too surprised at what happened. Versus the detriment, which would be the moon, not being able to emotionally share how you feel about stuff, to represent your emotions and be open. It's very pragmatic, and it's like Do I be a good person or a bad person, right? Which would translate to, am I going to be strong or weak to a Capricorn? Even though it's not like that, they can see it like that. Now, the exaltation is Mars. Why? Because it's steadfast. Mars is domiciled with Aries. Mars in Aries really wants to just go. It's going to go for the fight. It's going to go for it. Mars in Aries versus Mars in Scorpio is a difference between, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger in any one of his old Bravo type Rumble type of movies, walking around with a minigun in the forest versus like, I don't know, 007 being Mars and Scorpio. Very calculated, very smooth, sniper. Mars in Capricorn is the general, it's the warlord in the strategy room. It's not outside on the field. I'll also say Mars in Capricorn is Lucifer, where Mars in Aries is Satan with a leather jacket on a motorcycle versus Lucifer's cold and quiet, or the guy from Star Wars or whatever, the Darth Vader. It's not a bad energy, but it's definitely going to be there every single day. I know a few Mars and Capricorn people, and sometimes I'm like, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're not mentally sick?" Because they don't stop. They actually outlast everything else in the zodiac, in my opinion. That placement, you put it in there, and it's like, good luck, right? Capricorn being a cardinal placement, ironically, like this placement right here seems so fixed to me, They will pivot if the results are going to be affected by the time, but if it's like a 5% difference, they're not going to care. They're just going to go straight to the target and they will stay on it, right? Now, Jupiter is the planet of faith and abundance and hope. It's not surprising that Capricorn doesn't want to be there because that's the opposite. Capricorn's about restriction, responsibility, restraint. So it's like, I don't want to go from 0 to 1,000 in 2 days. I want to do it for 20 years. What do you mean? I don't have to have faith for that. I just need the numbers. That's really important to know. Does this mean that if you have Jupiter in Capricorn, life sucks? No, because the Jupiter in Capricorn could trine an Earth placement, oppose a Cancer placement, and it could add a layer of balance in your chart that you need for you personally, right? Um, and the chart, even after all these planetary dignities, will always have a balance. You will never feel like, oh, I don't have Jupiter exalted in Cancer. My life sucks. I have it in Aquarius. No, it's not like that. You got to look at the whole chart. Everyone is different. So reading these charts, everyone is different. There are archetypes and themes, but you could use any other system of archetypal categorization for that. Um, Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that compliment. So with that, that ends the teaching portion. I'm going to stop this, and then you guys have me for about 20 minutes to ask me any questions that you want.